You can grow in your faith and you can build. And that's great. But you don't want to end up in a ghetto. You're certainly not going to be of the world, but you aren't going to be in the world either. On the other hand, it's really easy to go the opposite direction. To end up so in the world that you end up, there's nothing distinctive. And you just kind of go along with what everybody... And we're always kind of trying to work out where the boundaries are. We had a discussion sometime last year about Eddie Izzard. I'm a big fan of Eddie Izzard. And we do a little... this is coming up in Vision Week, actually. The Gospel According to Eddie Izzard, which is a kind of stitched together, it's about an hour-long compilation. Eddie Izzard talks a lot about religion. He's not religious, but there's a lot of stuff in there about God. And so there's a whole cake or death routine that he does, and Jesus and the dinosaurs. Anyway, so Gavin has stitched all these. So we've got about an hour of all this, which we show as part of Vision Week. And it's very, very funny, I think. But we had this alien conversation, but he does swear a lot. So we thought we'd better beep some of the words out. And then this is serious. The three chaplains are sitting there going, yeah, but what counts as a swear word? What actual words are we going to beep out? Because we're going to play this in the chapel. And what words are we going to leave in? And you know what I mean? It's not actually very easy because you don't want to be really kind of prudish. Otherwise, but on the other hand, you don't want to just say, oh, it's all fine, we'll just go, everybody else does it. And those are things, it's not very easy. It's not very easy to know, how much you're allowed to drink, if at all. Some people say you shouldn't drink anything. No, you can have alcohol, but you need to drink responsibly. And, it's not always clear where the lines are on all these sorts of things. Are you allowed to go to a Halloween party? I mean, some Christians say, no, that's absolutely, you mustn't ever do. And some people, you're just being too prudish and, look at it, it's just a bit of fun. If you live as a small minority, if we're living in exile, we're constantly having to kind of evaluate those things. And we, I guess, draw lines differently. And maybe it makes me think we shouldn't be too harsh on Esther and Mordecai, because we don't exactly know what situation they were living under. You can say, Esther should never have concealed her faith. Yeah, but who knows what you or I would do if we're in that situation of real persecution. It's difficult to know. So the stuff there about living in exile, they were living in exile. It seems to me we are also doing that today. But there's also a real strong theme about providence, or about God at work. God is never mentioned in the book, but it is quite clear, reading the book, that God is at work. God is at work, even when we have no idea that God is at work, even when God is not being talked about or named or discussed. Nevertheless, God is at work, and kind of guiding and controlling and sort of drawing his will out of situations, even when we're not aware of it. You may think, if you speak to people, why did you come to Keele? I like to ask why. Some people will say, well, I came here and it was sunny when it was open day. That was... some people say, well, I came and I prayed about it and I really felt God was calling me here. Some people say, well, it was just an accident. I came through clearing. I didn't get into my first place, so I'm here by kind of, and people will come with all sorts of reasons, and you might be anywhere in that kind of spectrum. Sometimes people think it's my own fault. I made a bad choice, and that's why I came. But the lesson from Esther is that even when we make bad choices, or we think that it's an accident, actually, it may be God at work. Those words that Mordecai says to Esther, maybe, he does say the word maybe, he says, but maybe you became queen for such a time as this. Maybe this is exactly how God has ordained it, so that there is an opportunity, a unique opportunity for you here to do something that contributes to the will of God, to participate in fulfilling God's will here. Even when you just think it's an accident, or it's just coincidence, or it's even just bad luck, or it's your own fault. Nevertheless, God is able to kind of do something with those situations. And all of us will be, at some point, you will be in a unique situation at some point where only you are there. And there'll be some task, some opportunity that is there in front of you, and only you are there. And maybe you'll say, maybe I was put here for such a time as this. Maybe this is my task. Maybe this is God's providence at work. And certainly I find it quite helpful, particularly when things are going really badly. I find it quite helpful when things are going really badly and you're tempted to think it's all bad luck, or so you blame yourself as your own stupid fault or whatever. Then just to think, well, hang on, just a minute. Just suppose this isn't bad luck or accident. Suppose that this is part of God's providential plan. What is it? What is it that I am meant to be learning in this situation? What are the opportunities for me here to grow for myself? Or what are the opportunities being given to me here to give to others? Even when things are going really terribly, and especially perhaps when things are going really terribly. To say, well, maybe this is how God has created it, and maybe it's because we need to look a bit more carefully to try to see what the opportunities are that God is giving us in that moment. And the third thing I just want to bring out, and this is the sort of the big theme of the book, the theme as it's seen by Jews today, but which we can learn from as Christians, is that this is a story in which, despite the fact God is not named, nevertheless, God is faithful and God brings salvation to his people in the end. This book was read actually in the concentration camps. The Nazis were if they found somebody with a copy of the book of Esther, because it's a story about surviving Holocaust, the Nazis would execute any prisoner instantly if they found a copy, if they were reading the book of Esther. But people memorized it and then they just wrote it out again because it's a story about deliverance. It's a story about salvation. Even in the worst of circumstances, it's a story which says, God is bigger. God is bigger than everything else. I had to do maths. My dad was a mathematician, so I had to do maths when I was at school. And then as soon as I got to university, I never did any again. But I do remember, like this whole business about equations. And sometimes, correct me somebody who's a mathematician. See, in order to solve an equation, somehow you have to add a new term. And once you add a new term, then it actually makes some of the maths easier and you can begin to solve it. Something like that. I don't know. That's probably why I dropped it. It was a wise idea. But the point really is, once you add God to the equation, everything is unbalanced. I mean, God is such a big factor of the equation that God, outweighs every single other thing. And, there's something really powerful as we read the book of Esther, that even in the face of persecution and threat and danger and violence and bloodshed, God is bigger than all that, and God delivers his people in the end. God delivers his people in the end. And it's just something that we've got to hold on to as Christians. It doesn't always seem like that. And maybe we don't even see it in this life, in the here and now. But as Christians, we believe that to be true. If not now, then in the world to come, in God's kingdom, God will deliver his people, and righteousness and justice will be done. And there's a kind of hope there that's not just worth clinging on to, but, when you haven't got any hope, it's the only thing you can cling on to. Amen.